What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video we're going to be talking about Free Comic Book Day, Judgment Day #1 by Kieran Gillen, Dustin Weaver, Danny Lore, Karen S. Darboe, Jerry Duggan, and Matteo Lally. And in this video, we are going to talk about why the Eternals are about to go to war with the X-Men. We're also going to talk a little bit about the reveal of Bled's daughter, Bloodline. And we're also going to talk about how a certain red-headed jackpot in Spider-Man's life just earned Moira McTaggart's undivided attention, and how this could possibly lead to the Avengers' beef with the X-Men. We're gonna talk about all this and more right now, but first, let's hit that intro.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie, and make it look easy.
Okay, so when we kick this book off, one of the first things we get is a story that takes place, at least at first, roughly a million years ago. And it involves the character Druig, Uranos, and Odin. And this is all an aid to talk about why Uranos has such a hard-on for taking down deviants and culling excess deviation wherever he sees it, thinking that even the slightest bit of deviation is excess deviation. For those who don't know, and I've actually talked about this in my video series, breaking down all things Eternals related, but as a little bit of a primer, we'll run back through a little bit of it regarding deviants. Deviants are beings that were created by the Celestials alongside humans and Eternals. While Eternals are beings of great and immense power, but lack the capacity for change, deviants are the polar opposite. They may not be as powerful as Eternals, but they are beings capable of incredible and, in a lot of cases, terrifying levels of evolution. Not just saying like, oh, they evolve over time as a species. No, each individual deviant can evolve over the course of their life, sometimes resulting in what is called excess deviation. Now, if you're familiar with the Eternals from the MCU film, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you right now, the deviants aren't just mindless monsters that look like monstrous alien versions of dogs or birds or cats. Deviants often tend to be just as intelligent and sentient as any other normal human or Eternal for that matter. And while a lot of times we think of deviants as being grotesque monsters, we can't forget that there are instances of deviants who look perfectly normal. The character Ransack, who is a deviant who has aligned himself with the Eternals, is one such case. To look at him, you would think he was an Eternal since he hangs out with Eternals, but he's actually a deviant. Uranos' stance on deviancy is nothing new. We've talked about this in some of the more recent issues of Eternals. He has no love for anything with even the slightest amount of deviation. In this case, even talking with Odin about a species of monkey that has developed telepathic capabilities and, if left unchecked, have already started developing a sort of hive mind, something that he knows if they don't cull it now will become a problem later. Or maybe it won't, but the thing is, he doesn't want to take that chance. And while Odin reluctantly just lets him do what he wants to do, because he doesn't feel that the Avengers going to war with the Eternals over a species of monkey that he didn't even know existed in the first place, he doesn't think it's that wise of an idea. But here's the thing, and something that the machine that is responsible for the Eternals' death and rebirth tells us, pretty much everyone who is considered to be one of Earth's mightiest heroes, they just consider them Avengers. Even if they're not technically connected to the Avengers in any way, the Eternals just see them as Earth's mightiest heroes that aren't Eternals. And that the Avengers are, for all intents and purposes, heroes that are worth eternal consideration. But then they bring up mutants. And this is where they wind up going in to the whole thing with Odin and Uranos talking about the mutation within that species of monkey almost a million years ago. They even go into talking about how the Avengers don't really even know how to notice excess deviation or when they're actually fighting some form of a deviant. But with everything that's been going on recently with the Eternals infiltrating Avengers Mountain, as well as Ajax manipulations in trying to get the Eternals to go to war with the Avengers over what she perceives as the desecration of one of their gods, even though she has technically desecrated one of them herself recently. That's a whole other story, and I'll get around to it eventually. Probably gonna save it for when the Eternals finale comes up. But right now, Druig has discovered something that no one else on Earth really knows about other than Orcus. Druig has hired another Eternal, Jack of Knives, who is skilled at infiltration and not being seen, and Jack of Knives has revealed what the mutants are capable of in regards to resurrection. This is considered by Druig to be excess deviation, or at least he's going to try and spin it as such to take the mutants down a peg. The fact that mutants have become essentially no different than the Eternals, able to die and be resurrected. Only in the case of mutants, when they die, it doesn't cost a random human's life. In the case of Eternals, as we've learned during Kieran Gillen's run, it does. Their deaths and rebirths cost one random human their life to fuel the rebirth of that dead Eternal. Something that's been a huge point of contention for the Eternals lately, and why they've been trying so vigorously not to die. Could this be jealousy? Could this be them just not wanting the mutants to be as powerful as they are? Or could Uranos' mandates finally be making their way down the chain towards the other Eternals? As we must remember, Thanos is the prime Eternal right now, and he's gotten pretty chummy with Uranos as of late, even recognizing him as less of a grand uncle and as more of a grandfather. Which may or may not be true. Uranos and Thanos are very striking in their appearance, and it wouldn't surprise me if there were some shenanigans that happened somewhere down the road where Uranos might have gotten in the bloodline a little bit more than he already was, if you feel where I'm coming from. But this is all what is setting up the Eternals' beef with the X-Men. They are starting to recognize the mutants as deviants because mutants have discovered the secret of circumventing death. Not only that, but over the course of all the different X-Men titles since House of X, resurrection has led to many mutants getting secondary, and in some cases, tertiary mutations. Their powers changing and growing in ways that they never did before, and that some mutants are gaining powers that they normally would never have had, thanks to the fact that the resurrection pool is kind of communal. So some of them are getting powers from other mutants, or the mixture of all these different genes and genetics coming together at the hatchery has led to further mutation in what is already a species very heavy on mutation. This is the very thing that Uranos would want to stomp out immediately. I think it's safe to say that in the end of all of this, the Avengers likely are not going to really have a beef with anyone. If anything, it seems more and more and more as the days go by and we learn more about this event, it seems like the Avengers are just going to wind up being the buffer between the Eternals and the X-Men, and the ones trying to judicate this whole thing and keep it from escalating any further than it already kind of seems to be going. Jumping over from that, I do want to briefly just kind of talk about the whole deal with Bloodline, who is Blade's daughter, who has been revealed to us in this issue. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because honestly, I talked about this during my video breaking down the character Blade, going over how they were introducing this new character of Bloodline in this very issue, and a lot of the things that I posited in that video, well, they're true. A lot of the guesses that I made about this character, they are all 100% true. She is, in fact, the daughter of not just Blade, but his one-time love interest from early in his comics history, Saffron Calder. And I also posited that he very likely knew about this child because he literally sends Saffron a letter that is literally titled to go to Saffron, and it has weapons and all that sort of stuff in a case that is meant for her when she's ready. And that was one of the things we talked about, so I don't really feel it bears any more discussion beyond that. She seems to be a more level-headed and chill person than Blade could be, though that's relatively speaking. She does seem to kind of fly off at the handle and takes fighting vampires incredibly seriously and isn't really surprised by their existence, though she is seemingly surprised as to what affects them. So she doesn't know as much about vampires as we might think, but I definitely think we'll be seeing Blade and his daughter getting some quality time in the future, and he will be teaching her how to become like him. Though maybe he won't be as keen on it, but he did send her weapons, so I don't know. Blade seems like a practical guy, and he knew that she was going to be like him. being a half vampire, half human, I'm pretty sure that he would definitely make sure that she's prepared for what's to come. Now, the question is, what is her level of power in comparison to Blade? Because as we know, Blade, he was created by being born of his mother after she was bitten by the vampire Deacon Frost, and the enzymes of vampirism passed on to him. That makes him a Dhampir, half human, half vampire. I wonder how that works in terms of a half vampire, half human, having a child. Would it dilute the bloodline, or would this be like Dragon Ball Z where it doesn't really matter? That the curse of vampirism is so strong that even if he were to have a child with another human, that resulting child would still be half vampire. I don't know, it's something to think about. The last thing I want to talk about is what's up with Moira McTaggart and why she has taken a certain interest in the love of Spider-Man's life, Mary Jane Watson. Well, as it turns out, Mary Jane has recently become a spokesperson for Krakoa, or rather at least Krakoan drugs, as we've recently discovered that her aunt Anna had been suffering dementia, and she received access to the Krakoan drugs, and these have not only helped get rid of her dementia, though she does have to keep taking these pills on a regular basis, she's also been taking some of the other Krakoan drugs that help extend her life. So not only is she getting to circumvent dementia, but she's also getting to circumvent natural life. And Mary Jane, while she has admitted that she doesn't like the idea of calling something a miracle drug or a miracle cure, she has come to believe very heavily in the drugs that Krakoan has to offer and how it's saving people's lives. And she's even going out doing press junkets and press tours with her aunt, no less, to get people to understand that mutant kind is giving humans the greatest healthcare system, the literal Medicare for all of the Marvel Comics universe, and that it's literally costing them nothing. Now, this in and of itself has earned Mary Jane Watson not only the thanks of Krakoa, but it's also earned her a slot at the Hellfire Gala. That's why a lot of people were wondering, oh, well, why is Mary Jane getting to go to the Hellfire Gala? Wouldn't they only invite people who were important? Not to say that Mary Jane isn't important, but is she more important than Tony Stark? Is she more important than, I don't know, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross's presence at the Hellfire Gala? I mean, you could say what you want about either of those characters. I'm not overly fond of either of them, but I'm just saying, even for as despicable as the two of them can be from time to time, is nowhere near as important enough to just be invited on just, oh, I'm Spider-Man's sometimes girlfriend alone. No, the reason why is because she has become a spokesperson for Krakoan Pharma. But this has gotten her the attention of Moira McTaggart, who right now is plotting the very demise of the X-Men. And in this, we've learned a little bit more about why she even went along with the Krakoan experiment. It wasn't because she thought that the mutants were actually going to win, and this has been posited in some other issues like Inferno and 10 Deaths of Wolverine. She did this, she wanted Krakoa to happen because she wanted all the mutants in one place, so that when it was time to strike, she could easily take them down. She was always working on a cure for the X gene. She's always been working towards that goal. And right now, she has a plan to do something about the X-Men, something that's going to strike a major blow to Krakoa, and she plans to do it at the Hellfire Gala. But how is she going to get into the Hellfire Gala, you might ask yourself? Well, she plans on getting into the Hellfire Gala by way of Mary Jane. Something that we learned Moira has the capability to do, to take the skin from a human being, or mutant for that matter, and place it on herself somehow, wearing it as a second skin. She used this in 10 Deaths of Wolverine to take the skin of Banshee, who unwittingly thought that he was just meeting up with an old flame, and it turned out he was being used. Though it seemed as though Moira had just savagely ripped the skin from his body, but that necessarily couldn't be the case because his skin looked relatively intact when she took it and was wearing it later. As for the case of Mary Jane, Moira is going to take her skin so that she can wear it and go to the Hellfire Gala. Now, the question I have is, has she improved this technique any at all? Because when she took Banshee's skin, it was pretty much a sloppy job. Yeah, she took it in one single piece, but if you were to look at her wearing Banshee's skin, you would be able to tell that it was someone wearing someone's skin. She kind of looked like Moira McTaggart by way of Leatherface. But that was before she got fully upgraded into a full-on cyborg. Now that she's fully a cyborg, I have to wonder if that technique has been upgraded some, and she'll actually look more like actual Mary Jane when she does what she's about to do. The other question I have is, does this kill Mary Jane? Because if you're reading Amazing Spider-Man right now, we have discovered that she's no longer with Spider-Man. she's with some Paul character and they have 2 kids together. So Mora is about to kill a woman, presumably, just so she can infiltrate the gala. Or maybe she's changed some things. Maybe there's been some upgrades. Maybe she won't take Mary Jane's skin, like physically, off of her body at all. Maybe she'll just copy Mary Jane's skin onto her body and then just put Mary Jane somewhere else. A lot of people have been very curious as to how this is gonna play out. Is Mary Jane Watson dead? And if she's gonna die, are they gonna, like, is Krakoa gonna like break the rule and resurrect her even though she's not a mutant? Because we know they can. They have the ability to do so. They did it for Wanda Maximoff, who is no longer a mutant. They resurrected her just the same. They could do the same for Mary Jane, possibly. Who knows? I am always a huge proponent of Occam's razor, which basically is a mindset that the solution with the least amount of moving parts, the simplest solution, is typically the right one. So I'm gonna say that I don't think that Mary Jane is actually going to die here. I think the most simplest solution is for Mora to just be able to copy Mary Jane's skin and just leave her to do whatever it is she's going to do. Well, yeah, she doesn't like Mary Jane because she's, going around doing press tours and big upping all the mutants that she hates. I feel like Mora killing Mary Jane wouldn't necessarily make the Avengers hate the X-Men. I mean, maybe it could in some weird twisted way, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Mora clearly has designs on making them fight against one another, and she seems to believe that this is going to be the way to make it happen. I don't think what she's doing in this comic is going to set off the Avengers wanting to take on the X-Men, but I definitely think whatever she does at the Hellfire Gala definitely will, and it could be just as simple as revealing the secret of mutant resurrection or all the other secrets that the X-Men are hiding. Whatever the case is, Mora has seen a potential future where the Avengers and the X-Men go to war with one another, and honestly, just from what she shows us, and it seems like there would be heavy losses on both sides, as we see that Wolverine and Magneto are definitely successful in this potential future against their respective opponents, with Wolverine literally decimating Iron Man, and with Magneto taking Captain America's greatest weapon and turning it against him. But of course, on the flip side of that, we literally see Thor crush Cyclops' neck with Mjolnir and Captain Marvel snap Rogue's neck. All of these things are incredibly possible. Iron Man is no match for Wolverine, at least not in terms of combat capability, and we all know that Magneto is a master of magnetism. He could easily suffocate Captain America with his own shield. And of course, Thor would easily be able to outclass Cyclops in a fight, especially if he was able to wield the full might of Mjolnir without holding back. And of course, if you aren't familiar with Captain Marvel, I would forgive you for thinking that Rogue is more powerful, which is not the case. Rogue is powerful, but she's not as powerful as Captain Marvel. If anyone could snap Rogue's neck, it would be her. But all that aside, this is just one potential future, and Mora even says so herself. It could happen if she plays her cards right, which echoes something that Destiny once told her about how many lives she could have, saying that originally Mora could live 10 lives, 11 if she played her cards right. Well, right now, Mora is living an 11th life. She died during 10 deaths of Wolverine, and this new life as a cyborg is her 11th one. So she played her cards right once. Can she play her cards right again? Anyways, that's everything I wanted to talk about with Free Comic Book Day Judgment Day #1. Let me know what you thought about it. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.